Good Thursday morning, everybody, and welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane with Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, and Matt Ray. This is the crew today, and a special shout out to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. For a free estimate, give them a call today at 865-524-5888. Thanks so much for subscribing to the Volquest YouTube channel and for listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you haven't already subscribed to Volquest.com. Go ahead and do it. The best recruiting information, the best team news, all on Tennessee football, basketball, baseball, whatever you guys want. It is over at Volquest.com. Got a whole lot of questions to get into, and we'll go ahead and start. We'll start with Pine. What does Joe Milton do better than Hendon Hooker, and which side of the line of scrimmage is the strength right now, left or the right, Brent Hubbs?
Joe Milton's obviously got a better arm. That's an arm like we've not seen, in any of our time. I mean, he can throw late and get away with it. I think that's something that's a little bit unique and different than what Hendon Hooker can do. Joe's bigger in stature. Can he take a hit better? I don't know. We'll see. I think Hendon's escapability was better. And obviously, Joe's got to go out and prove the production. But I think from a physical standpoint, Joe can do, anything he wants to do, with the exception of the escapability. I don't think he has Hendon's ability to make a play as easily as Hendon did when things completely break down.
Let's go to Athrun. He's got a couple of questions here. We'll start with a recruiting one for Matt. Does Iffy to Oregon mean anything to Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee liked Iffy. They recruited Iffy pretty heavily, but it was always going to be Tennessee or Oregon, it felt like, for the last month and a half, 2 months. And I don't think Tennessee will quit recruiting Iffy, but there's other guys on the board. They're sitting well at cornerback, I think, early on with Marcus Gorey and Caleb Beasley, firmly committed. So there's a ways to go at that position. They're working on a couple of flip targets. They've offered a couple of more guys. They'll evaluate Jalen Crawford at Parkview later in the month. So that's, is that a direction they choose to go? They've been involved somewhat in that recruitment, but haven't, pushed all the way in yet. So we'll see. But I think, they're still okay at the cornerback position right now, despite Iffy coming off the board at Oregon.
I think they're trying to get if they do end up getting Boo Carter as well.
I don't see Boo playing corner. Okay. I see Boo playing more of a safety. With that, I don't think that changes anything if they get Boo Carter. And honestly, I think you just put Boo Carter where he fits. Is that on the offensive side of the football? Is it at safety? Can he play, nickel corner maybe? I don't know, but I don't think that affects what they're going to try to do at the cornerback position.
Rob Lewis, who were the main ball handlers at the beginning of the season while Zakai Ziegler's getting up to speed?
I think it's a lot of what we saw last year. I think Santi will be probably your primary guy. I think Meshack, even though, he's far from being a natural point guard, he handled the ball a lot, in that stretch after Zakai went down. I think you'll see Freddie Dillon do a lot of that. Now, Freddie's not a classic point guard, but this 2 or 3 times I saw him play in high school or in the summer, with his travel team, he was always his team's primary ball handler. Now he's more of a scorer in that role, but he's an able and willing passer. But I would say Santi primarily, a little dose of Jemai, and probably Freddie, if depending on where the trust level with the staff is from him. But having gotten here at midterm, been in the program for almost a whole year by the time November rolls around next year. I think those would be your 3 primary guys.
Anything fun to share from the Big Orange Caravan? I know both you guys went to the different stops. Anything that hasn't been mentioned about the Big Orange Caravan, Brent?
No, turnout was good. A lot of excitement from people, but those are. Rick Barnes making fun of Bob Kessling and putting Josh Heupel on the spot in Chattanooga. Josh was. I will say this: Josh was pretty uncomfortable. I think when Rick Barnes asked him how many games he was going to win next year in front of everybody, and if he was going to make beating Alabama a regular thing, which if you answer that the right way, it gets everybody fired up, but it ends up on social media somewhere that you've called out Nick Saban in Alabama. So I don't I think Josh Heupel and Kelly Harper when they got to Chattanooga, had their guard up pretty good for what might be coming from the Reverend Rick Barnes, because when he gets in that room, Rob, and the tents are up, it's college athletics revival time for Rick Barnes, and he was selling some magic elixir, if you will, for the Tennessee fans out there.
And you're in a no-win situation if you're Heupel, because if you fire back with, you can't embarrass Rick, in that kind of, if you ask him how many times he's going to beat Kentucky, he's like, every time we play him, there's no comeback.
Yeah, at one point, Kelly Harper was like, "Just don't ask me anything." Like she was just like, "Let Coach Barnes just keep talking to Coach Heupel. I'm good right here."
Well, I think what a lot of people see is Kelly probably gets that every day.
Every day,
just not in front of an audience.
Exactly right.
Last one here for Math Run. Is it fair to call this year's baseball team a disappointment? I don't think that's fair. I mean, Tennessee's it's turned it around. It's got a 500 record in SEC play. I understand. I think what is disappointing, starting pitching not taking a pretty steep. I don't know if I'd say pretty steep. They have not pitched up to what they were last year or in that area code, in my opinion, because we know that these starting pitchers are, with Dolander and Burns, and of course Burns made a move to the bullpen. We know that they have another level. They hadn't been horrible. I think Dolander's done a lot of good things this year. I think Burns is adapting really well in the bullpen. Beams had 2 really bad starts, but I think starting pitching at times has been disappointing. I think Tennessee on the road has been disappointing for sure. But the season overall, no, because you were replacing literally every starter. That was a record-setting and breaking team a season ago. That, if you just looked, Drew Gilbert's the number 1 overall prospect for the Houston Astros, and he just got called up to Double-A. Jordan Beck got an award. About 7 of those guys got awards the other day in minor league camp. So disappointing year, no, but you'd like to be better on the road, and of course you need to finish out strong. Heading into the Hoover week of the SEC tournament. Let's go to LF Vol. Are there any rumblings about how the SEC can juice the TV deal back up to the top, or is it inevitable that the Big Ten will retain the top spot given their larger markets?
I mean, I don't know where the financials are. I think the SEC is well compensated with this new TV deal. CBS was getting the SEC at a bargain for a long time, and I think the SEC answered that call with their new deal with ESPN. I don't know exactly what the parameters are. I mean, there's always going to be bigger markets in the Big Ten when you look at some of the cities that are involved there, but I don't think anybody in the SEC's bothered by their current TV deal. I think they feel pretty good about where they're at, and the Big Ten and the SEC are running away with that financial purse compared to the ACC. I mean, look at what Clemson and Florida State are squawking about in the ACC because their deals aren't very good, and they're the one carrying the freight for them. The Pac-12 can't get a deal done at this point.
They may be on YouTube.
I mean, they may be on a streaming network when it's all said and done. And the Big 12 is introducing all kinds of things to try to spice up their coverage with, locker room access, in-game interviews with coaches and players, and I don't know what all they're talking about doing with that deal. So I think the Big Ten and the SEC, Rob, feel pretty good about where they are right now.
Yeah, and I'm speaking out of ignorance here, believe it or not. But and I've read just a little bit about this, but I wonder how much also the SEC's deal is sweetened from their standpoint by how much autonomy they have with the network, with the SEC network, and kind of flexibility to do their own thing, still under the ESPN umbrella. But I think, reading some things, I think the SEC has a pretty good amount of control for that level of contract.
And I'll say this too. I mean, the Big Ten does well. I mean, for anybody that suggests that the Big Ten network is not success, I mean, that network has done well in those markets up there. And the Big Ten is certainly has a good TV deal. I don't know that one is super jealous of the other, but I know the rest of the country is jealous of both of them.
Yeah, and it just makes sense to me. I mean, the only market that rivals Chicago is Atlanta. In the SEC footprint. And then you got Detroit. I don't know what you really count Rutgers as, but they I'm sure they draw some eyeballs there. Maryland, you got DC, Baltimore. I mean, I think for the population base for the SEC is compared to the Big Ten, I bet the dollars per eyeball that they get, I bet is way skewed in the SEC's favor.
Nashville 615. Which recruits on Tennessee's board will receive the most NIL attention? Matt Ray from other schools. In this day and age, does every recruit expect an NIL package?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think, you go in with the expectation that you're going to get something, along the way. You're not just going to go. But as far as which recruits are going to get the most attention, I mean, I think you look, along the ratings, and you also have to look at which states early on, you can have that, conversation with guys at the high school level. But coming in, once guys get to campus, I would say the 5 stars, Williams Waneri, Mike Matthews, Ryan Wingo, those guys are going to get a lot of NIL attention. I think it's generally the ones you would expect.
I think it's also position related too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's quarterbacks, it's guys who can protect the quarterback on the edge, it's guys who can rush the quarterback off the edge and play on the defensive line. That's much the same way those guys in the NFL are making a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
That's who's going to make the money in college football for the most part.
I was going to say, think about who gets paid in the National Football League, and it's going to trickle down.
Now, there's some exceptions. I'll say this too. I mean, I think in a case like Tennessee, this is not necessarily in recruiting, but just on their team, I think the center position at Tennessee, for example, might yield more NIL opportunities or NIL money than maybe the center at Georgia or somewhere else, just because of what they asked the center to do in the offense. And so you have some exceptions that way, but for the most part, I think you follow the NFL dollars and the NFL draft, and where the prizes are the guys who can get to the quarterback, guys who can protect the quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks.
Sam Smith, 22-33. The Kentucky team has the number 1 RPI in the country, but they like to play small ball with bunts and steals. Will that style work at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in mid-May? I guarantee you that they're just going to try to get on base. And when they get on base, they're 100% going to try to steal, because that's what every team in America should do against Tennessee. Because the pitchers are so slow to the plate, and they've not had success, pitcher and catcher. It's not just the catcher. Throwing out many base runners, albeit, Stark was able to pick somebody off Georgia and throw somebody out as well in the same game. So, yeah, if Kentucky's going to try to play their game for sure. Any concerns about Chase Burns and soreness? Sounds like he's going to be okay. Tony Vitello reiterated earlier this week that he would be available and ready to go this weekend. But anytime you're towards the end of the season and someone misses a weekend due to soreness, it doesn't make you feel great, especially with how well Chase Burns was pitching. 2 weeks off for Chase Burns, is that going to help him be fresh for the stretch, or are you worried about the rust? I think more than anything that would help him be fresh because he'll need to be relied on this weekend. Next weekend in South Carolina, he's got to eat some innings a little bit in Hoover, and what a weapon it is to have him in Hoover when potentially he could be called upon to open a game for 3 or 4 innings or whatever. So I think it'll help him. I think for sure having this time off, letting the arm rest a little bit, is going to help him because it's a critical point in time in the season. So your Rocky Top T says, so much fuss about right tackle. J.J. Crawford and Dane Davis have played it before, Brent. If Gerald Mincey doesn't want it, he can back up John Campbell at the left tackle. Problem solved. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the other two have got to prove they can do it, snap in and snap out, and be the best guys out there. I like Dane Davis. I think Dane Davis is a great guy, and I think he has probably exceeded everybody's expectations in terms of how much he's played at Tennessee. But he didn't win a job, on the left side. They went and got Gerald Mincey, J.J. Crawford to build depth, and those two guys played over him on the left side. So it's a matter about going and winning it. If I'm Gerald Mincey and I want to play, then I'm going to buy into being the right tackle and go compete for the right tackle job. My guess is right tackle is going to end up being right tackle by committee when it's all said and done. But that's what August is for, and we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, it's going to be one of those guys. There's no other options out there. So they're going to line up with one of them, and we'll see how those guys perform and how well they can hold up and how much help they have to have and all those things. I don't know that everybody grasps the luxury that they had last year with Darnell on the right side. You just did not have to worry about that side. just wasn't a concern because he was always there and he played so well. So, they'll have to help him. There'll be some growing pains for both the tackle positions. And one of the things last year, to help protect the left tackle position was Hendon Hooker's ability to get out of trouble. And we'll see how what's the compensation for that for this offense? Matt, Rob, is that throwing to the tailback out of the backfield with a safety valve? What do they do to create some help on the left side? Is that just bring a tight end over, or is there more safety valve? What do they do to compensate for the lack of escapability? And I'm not saying Joe can't get out of the way. I don't mean that. But I don't know that how many Houdini plays he's going to have like Hendon Hooker had a year ago.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the escapability. I mean, what is the catchphrase that all the draft guys use? It was Hendon's ability to make plays out of structure. I mean, it wasn't necessarily scrambling for 20 yards, but getting out, keeping a play alive for 2 or 3 seconds and finding somebody. And it's hard to say Hendon was underappreciated, but I think one of the things he did was excellent at was not necessarily scrambling, but getting out of the pocket, but keeping his eyes downfield. And I think that's going to be a big, big test for Joe when stuff starts breaking down. What's his poise like? Because Hendon was great at that.
Let's go to VA Vol 20 of the blue chip prospects. Matt, Tennessee is in on. Who is your one pick on each side of the football for them to land?
You mean, am I picking this personally? Like if it was my pick, they could have one? Or
I think that's what the question wants. Yeah.
Okay, I read that question before, and I was like, "Am I picking this personally or not?" Okay, so if it was me picking Tennessee, to
do it both. Hey, do it both.
Okay. And add percentages.
Yeah.
Give dates. We got lots we can do, Matt.
If I could pick one to add to the defensive side of football, I'd pick Williams Nwaneri. The guy's just a freak. He only has so much more room to grow into his frame. And I mean, they haven't made a defensive lineman at the high school level like him in a little bit. And then, I've been pretty open about this, I think, the whole way through. One of my favorite prospects in the class on the offensive side of the football and the class in general continues to be Mike Matthews. So I would pick those two if I was picking. Blue chip prospects to land, as far as chances go right now. I still like where Tennessee sits with Mike Matthews. There's a way to go in that one, but I do think the Vols have some, staying power there. I think they're right at the top, if not the team to beat today. So we'll see going into official visits. Those will be important. And then, I think right now they have some momentum with Williams Nwaneri, but looking long term, I think blue chippers on the defensive side of the football, I'd pick Cam Franklin right now. I like where Tennessee's been with him for a while. I like the relationship with Rodney Garner. He continues to get to campus. He'll be back for an official visit in June. I think the Vols are doing a lot of good things there right now.
We got plenty more questions to get into, so we'll hit on that in just a second. But first, a word from our proud sponsors. That is Exterior Home Solutions.
Life happens, and damage to your home can be extremely stressful. That's why it's important to find someone who offers efficient, quality work with financing options. Exterior Home Solutions, they value not only family, but community, and they're who I call when life happens, and you should too.
Brent, I don't know how that happens, man. Even when he's not here, we can't escape him.
I just assumed you like playing that spot, so I'm going to put that on you, my man.
That is the only spot that I have. I don't have the one of you.
Then that's on you, my man. As the executive producer of the Volquest.com podcast, then that's on you. Rob?
Is he shooting? Is he reshooting from the 6th tee at Pebble? Are we gonna have that up next week?
He's probably in a sand trap somewhere or in a cross bunker somewhere playing. Who knows what golf course he's playing after playing whatever's on his bucket list to knock off this week. And I'm sure he's got another one scheduled next month as well. Living a dream.
I do need to get the one of you on there. Of course, that's the only one that he sent me, I believe, back in the day.
Stunned.
Rob, let's go to
you don't want me. I'm on top of a roof, and it was an adventure getting up there and getting down there. So there was a moment where I went, "Oh, my hip's not completely healed at this point in time. This was not the greatest idea in the world."
T. Rocky by far wants to know, does Roman Harrison have the length and athleticism to be one of the guys that blossoms during his senior year? He seems to have a motor, but has been recruited over athletically. There's some truth into that, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has the length. I mean, and at this point in his career, there are some exceptions to the rule. But I mean, I think if you're looking for him to take a huge leap, I mean, I think that's wishful thinking. But I mean, I think he can be, a very productive player and very solid part of the rotation. But I'm not looking for him to just explode after he's been here 5 years.
Brent, they play with two Leos on the field so much, it feels like, that there would be some games where Byron Young would have 50 snaps or whatever, and Harrison would have 43. It was almost a 50-50, but they also played on the field at the same time in situations. So I feel like that's Roman Harrison and Pierce, Roman Harrison, Joshua Josephs, Caleb Herring. He's going to get his fair share.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, he's going to be out there. I think he'd be the starter, one of the starters. If they were playing today, I think he would start at Leo and Tyler Barron would start on the other side at defensive end. And then again, in their pass rush situation, they bring two Leos in. So, yeah, I mean, I think at this point, Roman is what he is physically. I think Roman's productive. Former linebacker turned nose guard turned defensive end is the path for Roman Harrison. And, he doesn't have great bend. He doesn't have great length, but he does have a high motor. He's played physical. And I think Rodney Garner is kind of maximizing a lot of what Roman Harrison has from a skill set standpoint. And I would expect that to continue. I thought Roman had a solid year last year. It wasn't great. It wasn't Byron Young, but he had a good number of quarterback pressures, some tackles for loss. I thought he played pretty well for Tennessee on the opposite side.
19 Vol 70 wants to know, hey, it's been 3 weeks since NCAA hearing. Has there been any change in the vibes inside the UT athletic department regarding a possible outcome over the last 3 weeks?
No, I mean, I don't have any new vibes. I don't know that there would be any communication to yield a whole lot of new vibes or anything like that. Theoretically, they could get an answer any day now. I think it's going to be the end of this month, first part of June before that happens. But in theory, it could come at any point. But no, I don't think Tennessee suddenly has a bad vibe. I think they left Cincinnati feeling like that, for having to go into one of those things, it went about as well as could be expected. Nobody wants to be a part of those. But I think overall they felt like it was a pretty solid, it went okay. Is the best way to describe that.
Hitter wants to know, Matt, what's up with Kamarion Fountain? Felt like Tennessee was deep into that one, but haven't heard his name mentioned in a while, including recent war rooms.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Fountain's been kind of quiet since, early April. He took a visit to South Carolina. He was supposed to be back to Tennessee for the spring game, but travel didn't really work out. So he didn't make that trip. He's a guy that's, new offers are coming in for him. He's kind of soaking those in and developing his travel plans. Tennessee's been in a good spot with him for a while, dating back to the winter. They had some real momentum there, it felt like. I mean, he's supposed to take an official visit in June, and we'll see if he makes his way into the town, later this month. He hasn't confirmed that with me yet, but we'll see if he ends up here. But, I think Tennessee's got a chance to grab that momentum back, even if it is just on the official visit. He has a long-standing relationship with Rodney Garner and the Tennessee staff. I mean, they were almost 9 or 10 months ahead of everybody else with offer number one, so obviously that is something that meant a lot to him. But other schools are swinging. I think the last time we mentioned him in the war room, we mentioned, heading into that South Carolina visit, that they were a team that's pushing hard, and there's been other new offers come in. So that is a guy I need to catch up with, but I'll get you some more on Cam Fountain in the coming week.
Let's go to Dell Vol 24. At what position groups do you think Tennessee is at championship contender levels? What groups still need some work? Rob, I don't want to sound I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer when I say this, but I would say no positions right now, right? And that's no slouch to Tennessee, but I think you had a championship level quarterback last year. We haven't seen Joe Milton play consistently in 2 years. The offensive line needs some work. Defensive line needs to get better. You've gotten better all across the board, in my opinion, but I wouldn't say that they're championship levels right now. I mean, the closest one I mean, might be receiver. To be honest, do you see this any differently?
No, not at all. And I don't think that's a slam.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about championship level in this league, you're talking about having a bunch of high round draft picks. I mean, championship level at quarterback in this league means that you're a first round quarterback and probably went to New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Same at receiver. So no, I wouldn't say Tennessee's at championship level anywhere. But again, that's, you're talking, like I said, that's not a knock. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of first round draft picks in a position group when you're talking about championship level in the SEC.
And that can change. I mean, that can change throughout the season. Of course, it changed last year. Hendon Hooker put himself in that conversation. Darnell Wright, and
we didn't think Tennessee had a Biletnikoff winner on the roster last spring. I mean, so see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and it gets back so much to the quarterback position. I mean, that's where a championship that's where that conversation takes place, right? I mean, where's Alabama without Bryce Young? They weren't a championship level team across the board yet. With Bryce Young, they put themselves in a situation that now, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, a first round draft pick. I know. I mean, if somebody's going to go, wait a minute, they had 2 first round picks. But the quarterback was the catalyst that made them go. Georgia was obviously loaded and has been. I mean, that's the team everybody's chasing and everybody's trying to catch. Aside from that, I don't know how many teams in this conference you would say has, quote, championship positions. But it's all about what you develop as a team. And for me, particularly offensively, it's about what your quarterback does. It's hard to win in this league without good quarterback play. There's just nobody doing it without good quarterback play in this league. If you're bad at quarterback, you're not going to have a very good year.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think you look back across the time frame, even when, Alabama was starting their run years ago under Nick Saban, the quarterback play was a hindrance at times. They had the great defense, had everything. So you have to have quarterback play in this league. And, I think that continues. Stetson Bennett was what he was for Georgia, but he played at a championship caliber at times.
And he got better.
Yeah, he got better, as his career went on, and he played at a high level, high enough to, become a draft pick. So, yeah, I think that now more so than ever is the position that drives things.
This is a fun question to ask. NWGA Vol wants to know, based on physical traits, does a wide receiver trio of Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, and Brew McCoy have the potential to be the best wide receiver group yet? Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Brew McCoy, they would have been hard to beat, but we rarely saw that group because of the injury. Of course, the combination of White, Thornton, and Brew, that can happen. That's not the set starting trio. I mean, Keaton's going to be in there somewhere, right? But as far as wide receivers, Brent, does this maybe this trio or this top 4 have the potential to be the best one that Heupel's had here at Tennessee?
Well, here comes my wet blanket. Let me see Dante Thornton first. I mean, I haven't seen enough to know. I mean, physically, what little bit he did at Oregon, right? The speed, the deep ball, those things, jumped out, stands out. You talk to anybody on campus, he's athletically got all kinds of gifts and those types of things. So, I just want to see it translate in onto the field. If you're going to go that route, can he win press man coverage on the outside? Because at the slot, he's going to get a free release. Jalen Hyatt was a much better slot player than he was outside receiver because Jalen Hyatt got free releases in the slot, and didn't have to physically win a lot of man coverage out there, bump and run type stuff. So, how does Dante Thornton handle that? Rob, I love Squirrel White. Can Squirrel White physically do it for 12 games at 170 pounds across the middle of the football field? And look, only time's going to tell. I'm not saying he can't. I just wonder if physically he can do that game in and game out because he's not very big.
Well, that's fair. That is a great question, but I would, and the guy, mentioned this in his question, but if Tillman's healthy, which he was not, and him and Hyatt, we never saw them, hitting on all cylinders together on the field. But I would take, the 3 from last year, but you have to throw in the caveat: is Cedric healthy? And if he is, then I would have to go with that group.
Hey, 18 targets. 13 targets playing on one side of the field at Pittsburgh this year.
That's what I was about to say. Pitt was the only time, I think.
The only game, just one game.
You really had a chance to see that.
Yeah. And listen, Go ahead, Rob.
I'm just saying, dropped a touchdown pass that he never drops.
Yeah.
In that game, extremely uncharacteristic, or his numbers would have been even bigger.
I want to see what Brew McCoy looks like in year 2 in this system too. I mean, I think there were times where you kind of wondered in games like, where's Brew? Like they've kind of gotten away from Brew McCoy. I mean, it was, for whatever reason, didn't seem like – there were stretches where you just felt like, hey, big play here, they can go to Brew McCoy. But I mean, it was Jalen Hyatt because Jalen Hyatt was open. I think Brew McCoy is set to have a big year. I'll be surprised if Brew McCoy does not have a really big year for Tennessee. Year 2 in the system, I think he's going to be healthier. I know he had the elbow deal, but the hip's going to be better. I think he's a guy who can really take off in year 2 in the system. And by game 5 or 6, to answer his question, we may have we may have a different answer. It may be, they may be rocking and rolling. But again, part of that's your quarterback play. Can the quarterback get him the ball? Because we know this, Josh Heupel's going to get some people open. It doesn't matter what the nameplate says on the back of the jersey. Somebody's going to be open in the passing game in Josh Heupel's system. I totally believe that. I don't think anybody's solved that mystery yet.
We got 3 more questions to answer. We'll go to Taste Like 865. With the recent commitment of Kellen Lindstrom and other Missouri prospects in recent memory, has Tennessee ever had this much success recruiting that state? This might be one for Matt and really all 3 of you guys to kind of tag team. Who was the most famous volunteer football player from the state of Missouri?
I'm gonna hope that Brent or Rob know the answer to this, because I did some research into this question. I looked back to 2005 through the recruiting rankings and didn't see anybody that had signed with Tennessee from 2005 to present. I might have glanced over somebody. And then I looked back from 2005 back to 1998 or 1997 on the roster and didn't see anybody from Missouri. So I don't know the answer to that one. I may have to grab Javonte Spraggins, who's an Illinois kid from East St. Louis, and count him in there. That's the only one I know of. I mean,
I'm sure Hubbard's got something.
Should we call Bud Ford?
I can't come up with one, Hubbard. I can't imagine you don't have one.
Where was Alan Cockrell from?
Oh, that could be it.
I'm just wondering aloud.
We're all 3 looking it up.
Tennessee's not recruited there. I remember, this is going to date me a little bit.
Joplin, Missouri, Hubbard.
Joplin,
Missouri.
That may be the most famous one right there is Alan Cockrell, who, if he hadn't had the knee injury, would have been interesting to see what would have happened with him. Obviously, went on for a long baseball career. I remember, I guess it was it Chase Daniel? Rob, Philip Fulmer went. This was back when head coaches could go out on the road in spring evals. And I remember Philip Fulmer going to a high school in Missouri to see a quarterback. And I don't remember if that was Chase Daniel or who it was. But that was a big deal because Tennessee didn't venture into Missouri very often. There was some quarterback from Missouri that Philip Fulmer went to see. But now Tennessee's not made a ton of hay in the state of Missouri through the years.
Hubbard, I've got the media guide in front of me. Jeff Tullis.
Okay.
Alan Cockrell.
Okay.
Oh, Hubbard, here he is. DeRon Jenkins.
Oh, yeah. All right. I missed that one. Total whiff. Sorry, DeRon.
Wow. Scott Pfeiffer.
While you build your $1 million homes and do all your home and garden things out in Nashville.
So there hasn't been any until Spraggins, none until who's from across the river, but not since the mid-90s. DeRon Jenkins and Scott Pfeiffer.
Does the program or media guide break down every player from every state that's ever played at Tennessee?
Oh my gosh, Hubbard.
Could you imagine Georgia and Florida?
Hubbard, what are we going to do with him?
I don't know. They break.
I'm okay.
Cities. They go to cities as well.
Don't feel bad. I was trying for the internet, man.
Dude, wow. I look at the media guide for specific things that I need, but I'm not wasting 7 years.
You know what, hey, Rob? You know what Eric Kane needs? He needs a summer internship with Bud Ford, like Justin Minot had.
100%.
That would include a couple of things. One, you would work on the history book. 2, you would clean out underneath his house and do some landscaping work. Who knows what else you would have to do for Bud Ford and Halls?
You'd have to.
You need a summer intern with Harris D. Bud Ford.
You have to organize the cross country stats from 1958 from that season.
Yeah, let me just say, anything that Dustin Mina did, I'm not going to follow in his footsteps, so you can forget that.
Shout out to the Sweatbee.
Ron Jenkins, by the way, wore 18 at Tennessee. That's why Peyton Manning ended up at 16.
Let's see here. Two more. Josh, this is from JVol865. Josh Heupel's had a top 10 offense in the country almost, if not every single year. He's been either an offensive coordinator or head coach. If he continues that trend next season, does Tennessee win 9 regular season games?
Yes.
100%.
I would agree as well. Last one. This is a good one. Comments all around.
I hope it's better than the geography question.
That was not a dumb question.
No, it wasn't. We just didn't have an answer. I mean, it was like, So, no.
All right, last one. Question. At what position group do you believe the football team currently has the biggest drop off from starter to backup? It's got to be tight end, right?
I mean, I don't know where McCollin Castles is. Compared to Jacob Warren. I mean, Jacob Warren's got experience, but I don't know that. I don't know how big of a drop off that you have at
maybe center.
Yeah, I mean, I think center's just you don't even know who that's going to be. Addison Nichols would be your center who's never played it in a game, other than a scrimmage. So, I mean, I would certainly say center would jump out on the offensive line. I think they can find enough guards. They got enough to make that there, and they're unproven at one of the guard spots. Unproven at the defensive end positions. I think it's interesting at linebacker for me because they have a ton of talent there, Matt, when you look at the young guys. But there is such a drop-off in experience when you're talking about going from Aaron Beasley to Arion Carter.
Yep.
Now look, talent-wise, I'm not saying there's a drop-off there, but if you're talking and you throw the experience factor in there, there's a lot of learning on the job, from that standpoint. And the same would be said at the quarterback position. But from a talent standpoint, I don't think anybody sees drop off from a talent standpoint at those positions.
Yeah, I'd probably go with center too. I mean, just because you don't know, who it's going to be yet. And like I think I'm with Brent. I think it's going to be Addison Nichols, but he hasn't played it in a game. He definitely has the, IQ level to be, do everything they need from that standpoint. 4 greater than 4.0 GPA in high school. Eagle Scout did all those things, so he can understand what they're asking him to do, but he just hasn't played it in a football game.
Maybe it's right guard, just simply the left guard. It's being the biggest drop off because, seriously, you don't know who your left guard is. Javonte Sprague's going to play every single down he's healthy for, right? That might be the answer.
And it's unlike at the tackle spots. Your backups. Just Jackson Lampley's played a little, but outside of that, you just don't have anybody who's been out there when the bullets are flying.
So
and we'll see how Andre Currick adapts to this offense and what that looks like and all of that. I think there's a drop off there certainly without Jerome Carvin. That's a big step from a year ago. I think Carvin was a bit underappreciated. Here's one nobody's going to talk about too. Does anybody know who the backup punter is on this team?
The dude from Catholic. No, he's a kicker. Never mind. No, he's not. He's a punter. Tuberville.
Okay.
I think.
I would say they probably don't want Jackson Ross to roll his ankle or pull a hamstring at this point in time.
True. Typically, no one knows who the backup punter is, usually anyway. But yeah. But I'm with you. At least you kind of know some kickers that are on roster. But
I would take center because Cooper's so established, and that's such an important position to make this offense go. And you don't have anybody behind him who's played snaps in a game at the center position. So I'm going to go with the center position to answer that question.
I think that's a good one. And that's it here for this edition of the Volquest Mailbag Podcast presented by Exterior Home Solutions. Free estimate today if you give them a call, 865-524-5888. And you can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, to subscribe to Volquest on the YouTube channel. And if you are listening and you're not a member of Volquest, go ahead and do it right now. Incredible rates and the best Tennessee information out there. Team news, football, basketball, baseball, most importantly, recruiting. The best recruiting news from AP and Matt that you can get. You're not going to find it anywhere else. That is at Volquest.com. Appreciate you guys for being here. For Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Matt Ray, I'm Eric Kane. Thanks so much for listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.